Sometimes children develop habits of whining and complaining. It's a problem. It's actually a problem inside of the heart. Let's start there because these children have this belief that needs to change. And when we help them change that belief, then they start to change their behavior. But the belief usually goes something like this. If I'm uncomfortable, then I have the right to make everyone else miserable. And that belief needs to change because we all have a responsibility inside of our hearts. We should feel this pressure to bring joy into people's lives and to contribute to the positive climate in the room. I say that some children just bring this negative cloud into the room with their whining and complaining. And you feel sorry for the people they're going to meet when they leave the room because they just complain and complain. We need to help children make a change in the way they're handling life situations. And this is going to be changing this belief. But I think that sometimes it means we're going to help children address this by talking to them and explaining to them some very important things about life. I like to say there's two kinds of people in the world. There's whiners and there's solvers. Whiners focus on the problem. Solvers focus on the solution. And now we can have some ways to challenge a child who finds themselves whining and complaining, and we can say, you're complaining. Come back to me with a solution. For example, let's imagine that a child comes into the kitchen and says, I'm hungry. Now, they might not even be using a whiny voice, but they're focusing on the problem. And so you might say to them, that's whining. You're focusing on the problem. Why don't you go back out of the kitchen and try again? Come back in and focus on the solution. Well, what might a child say if they're focusing on the solution? They might say, Mom, could I please have a snack? That's focusing on the solution, not just whining. Children need more work in this area of focusing on the solutions in life instead of just on the problems that they have. I think sometimes parents contribute to this problem because when children complain, they're bringing problems to their parents in this complaining manner. And sometimes parents feel like when a child brings a problem to them, it's their job to turn around and solve the problem. So the child's complaining stops. I think we have to look at the process here. I think it's good for us to solve problems for our children sometimes, but sometimes we just need to turn it back over to the child and say, you're bored. Why don't you sit down and think of something creative that you can do? Don't come complain to me about that. So sometimes we transfer responsibility to the child. Sometimes we do solve the problems, but we want to teach our children how to come to us in a way that is not complaining and whining. Bring me a solution, not just a problem. And I can try to help you troubleshoot that. Even if you come and say, Mom, I don't know what to do about this. I'm having a problem. Could you help me with a solution? It's just the way a child is bringing the problem to us that's very important. Now, I think some children who complain a lot just need more work. I mean, they just don't know how to live in a world where it's hard. And so giving them a little bit more chores or giving them a little bit more work can be helpful for them because it helps them to be able to overcome some of their complaining tendencies. I like the verse in Galatians 6:9, which says, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. So Paul is just encouraging people to stay on this, work hard, don't give up. I think many of our children start complaining instead of knowing how to deal with the challenges of life, and they just give up and they resort to complaining, thinking that's going to solve the problem. And sometimes it does, because parents solve the problem that way. So we're going to extinguish complaining or whining because we're going to come to children. We're going to say, hey, look, you need to learn how to work hard, or you need to learn how to approach me better, or you need to learn how to focus on the solution, not just the problem. And as we do that, then children develop this greater character, this ability to come into a situation and not just focus on the problem. There's a lot of adults who whine and complain in life. I think it's time to work on this now as we're helping our children to grow and develop.